We have a 24-hour soak right here. They'll double in size.
That is significant. That's crazy.
How have we not had bean differential on this channel? We are fixing the bean blind spot. Hey, I'm Justine Doiron. I'm in the New York Times Cooking Studio kitchen, and today we're making creamy orzo, butter beans, and greens. Whenever I think of comfort food, or just food I want to make on a weekday, or just a pile of beans where I'm like, how do I turn this into a meal? It is usually being turned into this meal. It's a really creamy, comforting pasta, but then of course we have like nice, crunchy, kind of acidic greens to balance everything out. It's a lot of subtle flavors, minimal ingredients, but it just feels like home. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, but I made this recipe because I truly was just cooking dinner. It was a really like wintry kind of day, and it caught fire in a way that I was like, I can't believe like crispy kale is getting this much traction. But what I realized is people do just like hearty meals like this, like meals that are just comforting, easy. I really think the cheese on top is the big seller. I always prefer dried beans. Both have their pros and cons. So a canned bean, the pro there is that it's ready to use. It's much quicker. The con is that depending on the brand, you don't know if they've been pre-seasoned. You don't know the texture that you're gonna get. You kind of lose a little bit of control with the recipe, but sometimes dinner just has to be good. So like losing that control to save you time totally makes sense. Today we're doing dried beans. I like to soak my beans at least 6 to 24 hours ahead. I think we have a 24-hour soak right here. And I get it, sometimes you soak your beans and then 24 hours later you're like, do I want beans? But for me, I think it's a nice reminder to have on your counter, and then you're like, oh, that's what I'm making for dinner tonight. So you can see the big size difference. They'll double in size. It's important to cover them with about 3 inches of water because you'll see the next morning like that water gets absorbed. And then the difference in size is pretty huge. So we'll just start by straining the beans, get the water that they soaked in out. So beans in a big pot, just 1 onion. And while I'm taking off the skin, I'm leaving the root intact, and that's because we're gonna fish these out later. And then 3 garlic cloves. These sometimes get lost in the mix because I call for them to be smashed. Smashed just helps their flavor get in there, but after the long bean cooking time, sometimes you lose them. And that means somebody will get a garlic bite, and how lucky are they? And then 3 sprigs of rosemary, 2 bay leaves, 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, and only 2 tablespoons of olive oil, which a lot of people might say is a pretty low amount. I think these beans don't need any more. The one thing that is important is 7 cups of water. This is because this water in this exact amount really comes into play when we add in the orzo. And so then we'll bring this to a boil, reduce it to a simmer. I'm holding off on salt now because it's an old wives' tale that salt might impact the tenderness of your beans. I never really subscribed to rumors like that, but I want to play it safe, so here the salt will go in after the beans have been cooking for about an hour. Wow, this pot looks the same as our other pot. It's definitely not, it's a swap, but that's fine because this pot's been going for about 60 minutes, so I'm gonna fish out a bean, 2 to 3 beans to be precise. So I can see that the skin is still a little bit visible on the outside, and when a bean is fully cooked, that bean has expanded so much that the skin is taut against it, so these are tender, but they could use a little bit more time, which is exactly where we want them to be when we start our kale. It's time for this, which this is a lot, and we're gonna use 5 cups. 5 cups is usually about 8 ounces, so if you're getting ½ a pound of kale from the store, that's great. And we're just gonna tear it by hand off the stem in big pieces. Kale, like every green, is gonna wilt down, so 5 to 6 cups feels like a lot, but with this amount of beans, it'll be great. Just me, my greens, my beans. And that's a good amount of kale, and you can see some pieces are pretty big, some pieces are a little bit smaller. So we have 3 large shallots, and they asked me, they were like, should we prep this, or do you want to slice shallots on camera? And I said, I'm down for an adventure, but mostly because I wanted to show you how I like to slice my shallots. Have them lengthwise, and then they're very easy to thinly slice. I think it makes a really nice thinly sliced shallot, which is really important because the cook time on this is pretty short by allium standards. Usually we're really going long cook times on onions and shallots, but this is about 4 to 5 minutes. And then thinly all the way down. That was really satisfying for me. My knives are not that sharp. And then a quick microplane of the garlic. This is the best way, in my opinion, to get garlic finely chopped, minced. And the last step of this prep is to make what kind of makes the kale crispy, which seems counterintuitive, but it is 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, 1/2 of a lemon, which is around 1 to 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. 2 acids is my favorite thing to do because lemon juice can be a really highly identified flavor, like everybody can recognize lemon juice, but I think together they both bring their own unique notes while not overpowering in either direction. So it's not like, whoa, this is a vinegar hit, or whoa, this is very lemon juicy and honestly a little too fruity. So I like to do both. And then honey. This is going to kind of soak into the kale after we've sauteed it. Then as soon as we put it under a broiler, the honey will kind of crisp up the edges of the kale. The acid will soak into it and make it really flavorful. Let's hit this with a very liberal amount of salt, and then also a pretty decent amount of black pepper. Very simple, but do not be deceived at what this will do to our kale. Our bean pot is hot but still simmering, so let's move this off a big burner. And then the saute pan should be 12 inches. It doesn't have to be this shape, it can be higher side on the edges, but you need all that room because that's a lot of kale and it needs a lot of places to go. And so that'll go over medium heat, and then 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Let's let that heat up for a bit. I like my shallots to sizzle when they hit the pan. And so we're just gonna put the shallots in for a quick cook. Again, 4 to 5 minutes just to get them softened. The garlic will go in, and then after that, the kale will go in. Kind of coat that in all the aromatics we have going. I got it barely in, and that is right when we're ready for our sauce. So that'll go right over top. And this will help immensely. Your one goal now is to get the kale as evenly coated as possible. And that's gonna be pretty easy. And you can kind of see what we're going for, which is that all the kale looks nicely glossy, a little bit shiny, some shallots are poking up at the top. The crispiness is gonna come from the broiler. So after we get everything nice and saturated and kind of together, we'll pop it in there for 5 minutes. And what you're looking for is like crispy, a little bit browned edges on the outside of the kale. The middle might not be fully crisp, but the majority of the top will be brown, crisp, but not too brown. Not too brown. It is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. It is not only really beautiful, but it's really green and it's really good for you. So we're gonna set this aside and get some pasta in our beans. So our beans are looking beautiful. They have now reached the point where I'm really comfortable starting the orzo in them. We're gonna be fishing out the onion, the garlic. The rosemary will have split into rosemary pieces, so don't worry about fishing that out, but if you find the sprigs, let's pull those. And then of course the bay leaves. All this beautiful broth is gonna get sucked up by this orzo, and that's what makes everything creamy, really flavorful, really wonderful. And so we're gonna bring this to a boil. These beans have one more job. I'm gonna give this a little taste because here's a good place to add salt if we need it. Oh, this has reduced. This is super flavorful. I'm not adding any more salt. A beautiful boil is going, so all of our orzo is gonna go in. And just a quick reminder, keep an eye on the water level. You'll kind of see it at the 5-minute stage. It looks mostly absorbed, and then at the 12-minute stage, it should look pretty close to almost absorbed. Okay, so we're at the 11-minute mark, the 12-minute mark, and it is looking so good. You know when food is just very exciting? All of that broth that we built from the beans, those beans kind of collapsing and getting all starchy, that's why this looks so creamy. If you let this sit, it will just continue to get creamier, thicker. That's the magic of this recipe, is like you built the texture and then it just keeps giving back the longer you let it sit. So it'll sit for 5 minutes off the heat and add a little bit of lemon juice. Once the lemon is in, I'm gonna do just a little taste. And I can confirm that that is too hot of a temperature, but at home, maybe let it cool a little bit before you go in. It needs a little bit of salt. So from here, you can season with salt and pepper to taste. I say for savory food, Parmesan is the #1 beauty trick, but it's also just really delicious. Wait, I almost forgot. The perk of my job is that I get to try this before I feed everybody else. Wow, okay, you know, when everything just balances 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're like, wow, that was a really good dinner. I'm not here trying to like hype up beans, but I feel like my #1 job is to hype up beans. This is so delicious, so creamy, just the right level of cheesy. Just so insanely satisfying, so insanely simple. I'm gonna stop hyping it up because I have people to feed, but you can find this recipe on NewYorkTimesCooking.com and more of my recipes there. Thank you so much for watching.